The Strait of Hormuz closure. The Strait of Hormuz is 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. That is narrower than the English Channel. It connects the Persian Gulf to the rest of the ocean. About 1/5 of the world's oil passes through it, along with 1/5 of all traded liquefied natural gas. For decades, the arrangement was simple. The oil went through, the money flowed, and everyone agreed not to think too hard about what would happen if it didn't. On the 28th of February, 2026, someone thought about it. Now we all have to. The United States. The most striking beneficiary of the Hormuz closure is the country whose military caused the conditions that led to it. The United States is the world's largest oil producer. Its oil largely does not transit the Strait of Hormuz. When Brent crude briefly surged past $100 per barrel, American shale producers, who had been struggling with tight margins, suddenly found themselves printing money. U.S. LNG exporters are reportedly shipping cargoes as fast as their infrastructure allows. America is simultaneously the military actor most responsible for this crisis and one of the primary economic beneficiaries of its consequences. U.S. domestic oil prices are partly buffered from global price shocks because most American oil stays in the Western Hemisphere market. West Texas Intermediate has been trading at a notable discount to the global Brent price precisely because American supply is intact and American demand is more locally served. The U.S. consumer still gets hit through global energy inflation. But the U.S. oil industry is having an excellent quarter. The U.S. released 172 million barrels from its strategic petroleum reserve. That is a lot of reserve. The SPR was built for exactly this scenario. Whether releasing it stabilizes markets or simply delays the price shock is, at this point, a question economists are actively disagreeing about. Russia. Russia is a country currently under Western sanctions related to its war in Ukraine. It is also a country having a very good spring. Higher global oil prices mean higher revenues on every barrel Russia exports, and Russia exports a lot of barrels. Russia was reportedly poised to gain approximately $150 million per day from oil sales during this period. The Hormuz crisis has also given Russia a new class of customers. Asian economies desperate for supply alternatives are now competing for Russian crude, which Russia has been selling at a discount for 2 years. The discount is narrowing. Russia produces roughly 9 to 10 million barrels per day. It cannot replace the 20 million barrels missing from the Gulf. But it doesn't need to. It just needs to sell what it already produces at prices that are now dramatically higher. The math does the rest. Russia and China vetoed a UN Security Council resolution on the 7th of April 2026 that would have called for the strait to be reopened. The official reason was that the resolution was biased against Iran. An alternate reading is that 2 of the world's largest energy exporters looked at a UN resolution that would end the most profitable energy disruption in modern history, and decided they were in no particular hurry. Norway. Norway has a sovereign wealth fund worth over $1 trillion, the largest in the world, built entirely from oil revenues accumulated since the 1970s. When global oil prices spike, Norway's energy surplus as a share of GDP, already approximately 19%, grows further. Norway is a country so fiscally prepared for oil windfalls that it has built an entire institutional architecture, specifically to avoid spending them too fast. Norwegian oil fields in the North Sea are not affected by anything happening in the Persian Gulf. Norwegian LNG, increasingly in demand from European buyers trying to replace Qatar's supply, is now a sought-after commodity at spot prices that would have seemed implausible 6 months ago. Norway is also a NATO member. It has signed onto the joint statement calling for the strait to be reopened. Norway is formally committed to the resolution of this crisis while quietly benefiting from every day it continues. Japan and South Korea. Japan gets approximately 90% of its oil through the Strait of Hormuz. South Korea gets approximately 75%. These are not countries with meaningful alternatives. Japan has been asking Australia and the United States to accelerate LNG supply arrangements. Those markets are themselves tightening because everyone is asking at the same time. A daily cost increase for Japan of approximately $256 million has been cited in some analyses. For South Korea, approximately $224 million per day. South Korea reportedly holds strategic petroleum reserves equivalent to roughly 200 days of supply. Japan's options are thinner. Japan relies on the U.S. security umbrella to reopen the strait militarily, and on the IEA for reserve releases, both of which it does not control. Japan's government has already asked refiners to draw down stockpiles. South Korea is in emergency contingency planning. Both countries are now structurally motivated to accelerate energy transition, not for environmental reasons, but because the cost of fossil fuel dependency has just been demonstrated concretely, in real time, in a crisis that nobody in Tokyo or Seoul caused, and that nobody in Tokyo or Seoul can resolve. China. China is the world's largest oil importer. It sources roughly 40 to 50% of its crude oil from the Middle East. It also buys over 90% of Iran's oil exports. China, therefore, has a direct financial interest in Iran remaining solvent, and a simultaneous operational interest in the strait staying open enough for Chinese vessels to use it. Chinese flagships appear to be among the few still transiting the strait, suggesting Beijing has negotiated or been granted a protected corridor. China vetoed the UN reopening resolution. China is also building pipeline capacity from Russia, including incremental volumes on the Power of Siberia routes agreed in September 2025, precisely to reduce dependence on seaborne energy supply. China is simultaneously the country that loses the most if the crisis continues and the country best positioned to survive it. Decades of building stockpiles, dark fleet tanker networks, overland pipeline alternatives, and independent refinery capacity were not accidental. China has been running a geopolitical risk model on exactly this scenario for years. Whether that counts as preparation or provocation depends on which side of the strait you're standing on. The bill. Every crisis has a cost, and the bill is never distributed evenly. The Strait of Hormuz is 21 miles wide. For the countries on the inside, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, it is now a wall. For the countries on the outside, the United States, Russia, Norway, Brazil, it is currently a dividend. For Japan and South Korea, it is a reminder that energy security is not a concept. It is a number in dollars per day, until the lights stay on. The temporary ceasefire announced on April 8th did not fully reopen the strait. As of this recording, Iran is still controlling who passes and who waits. The 21 miles remain the most expensive real estate on Earth, not because of what's in them, because of what depends on getting through them.